Yes, here we are once again, another episode of the Apple on the Desk. For those of you who don't know, it's pretty much talking about the elephant in the room. Well, the apple on the desk. Now you guys get to see teaching and schooling and learning from an educator's point of view. Guys, I want everybody to remember an educational system and an educator are two different things. Please don't put them in the same category. That each one serves its purposes, and one of the best I know is right here, which is your actual host for tonight, Sandy Felicies.
My goodness.
There you go.
Wow, what an intro. Hey y'all. Yeah, I am here and we had a couple of burning questions. It's been a while since Apple on the desk, right? Because as is the life of a teacher, right? Yeah, I have my little antennas up. As is the life of the teacher, we're busy. So it's really, really, really hard to be able to just take some time to be the nerd that we are and do something that we really enjoy, without doing all the other things that we have to do that comes along with the job
Speaking of
description.
have to do we have to bring in this guy?
Yeah, we gotta.
I'm the light of your life, bro. You better bring it.
We have to, because John was actually my trainer when we were working together. He's the one that kind of showed me the ropes, and it all is about learning. Today's episode is about learning, right? How, why, and are we learning? So it's possible for me to know. Hi, Carmen. Hi, John. Kwang. John Wayne. So yeah, it's impossible to not include John, first of all, because he's part of the podcast network, right? And then second of all, because he has a lot of insight when it comes to teaching things and sharing things and learning things. And we all do, actually. There's not one person that can't be on this panel that can't put at least some type of input in what it is that we're talking about today, which is how, why, and are we learning? So yeah. So let's dive into it, shall we?
Yes,
I
please.
want to show you guys, or at least teach you guys, not teach. I don't want to teach anything. I just want to
It's
share.
like high school all over again. I'm in the
Is
back all
it?
quiet and shit. You know, the
No.
only thing that's missing is me every now and then, the teacher turning around.
Oh God. And he dipping out of class. I've seen him do it at least 8 times
No,
while I was
I've been
taking
here the
class
whole
with him.
time.
Right. I've seen you.
Yeah.
In and out. In and out. No, you estaba aquí. You estaba aquí.
I
Yeah.
wasn't in crash mode. Go ahead.
So what I was doing was we were trying to, work around, because learning is such a broad thing and we can go into different things. And somehow or another we just, brainstorming, we kind of like wanted to go into the how, the why, and the are we learning. And part of the inspiration for this was because as a teacher right now, I'm kind of seeing a shift in the dynamics of the kids. I can actually honestly say that this year the kids want to learn, which is yay. They want to learn. And I think that school year being virtual, online, at home, did something to them. They obviously,
Can I
yeah,
inter-
go.
learning and being in class is not the same thing.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna keep throwing it out there because you're my wife. I adore you. Besides that, you are a teacher and educator that I wish I would have had when I was growing up.
You know what? I am the educator that I am because we both shared a lot of the same teachers, and some of them were good. Um, and a lot of them weren't. A lot of them were not the kind of teacher that we needed.
So it upsets me when people like automatically put the teachers down because the system is this and the other, and it's like,
And the
well, but
yeah,
hold on, bro. You know what I mean?
it's
I've
not just the teacher.
seen my wife up, the whole fucking night, not sleep
Yep.
a wink. An hour is not sleeping, to get things ready for these kids, just to make sure that she can mold their minds in the right direction.
Right.
Fuck you. I know she's doing her job because I wish
Right.
my teachers were like that.
Right.
Exactly. And that's pretty much how it was when we were in school. We had those teachers that used literally the same plan book year after year. There was no change in it. It was
I
just they had the
remember
test.
seeing that.
Do you remember those plan books? Ah, mira, esto ya yo lo tengo, eso yo llevo ya a 5 years. Oh yeah, we code switch here. Sorry, just in case you're watching and if we say something like Spanish, 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 can you can translate that? Just please let us know and we'll try our best to remember. But yeah, we had because Joey and I, for those who don't know, we all went to the same high school, and we had the same teachers, and yeah, these teachers had the same plan books. And that's what it was called, a plan book. It wasn't called a lesson plan. It was called a plan book because they would stick it all in one book and they'd use the same one for years, giving the same
And it had all
information.
like the little divider thing and looking like the
Yeah.
gospel of third grade.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. And that was it. That was their lesson. They didn't stray from that. And so now teaching is very different than what it is today. But we're not talking about teaching. We're going to be talking about learning.
Learning, right.
And so what learning is basically there's a lot of people that, well, you got the way we were in school. John, I'm going to ask you a question. How was it that when you were in school, how was your learning environment? What was it that it looked like going on a typical day to class?
All right. Talking high school.
Sure, whatever level you want. I don't care.
All
High
right.
school, college, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, high school was fairly chaotic. The overwhelming majority of people didn't want to be there. That includes the students, the teachers, and the security guards, like everybody.
Right.
And yeah, and
So you wouldn't say that it felt like a safe environment to learn in?
um, at times it didn't. Most of the time, it was just not exciting.
Not exciting. So it was boring. It wasn't
Yeah,
engaging.
it
Okay.
wasn't engaging. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Look who joined
And
in.
hey, sister and the chitlins. So I interviewed those guys, and they're gonna come in eventually, right? But I interviewed those guys, and they gave us a lot of insight of what it is to be a learner today. No, these guys are great. I love them. So yeah, what I learned. So first I want to dive into the first part, how we learn. And this is where I definitely geeked out. So if I go too fast, if I go too deep into some type of words or whatever, stop me, pause me, do all of the things. Okay. So
Okay,
what
so
I
what we're gonna do,
learned.
we're gonna focus on you, and what we'll do here in the studio, we'll raise our hand if we have something to
Okay.
interject to it.
Wait, hold
Now,
on.
please, please
So
be,
just
please,
just like
What
a
is-
just like a classroom then, for real?
kind of like, yeah. But be verbal. Hey, Sandy, I got a question
John,
because
shut up.
we don't use the S word here, okay? That's rude. All right. So, how we learn. First of all, we got to understand that there's no one size fits all to learning. And like we were comparing, right, when we were in school, that we had the teacher that had the same plan book for year after year after year. That teacher would use a one size fits all kind of learning, right? So what the best way to understand how we learn is obviously by understanding how our brain works, okay, when it comes to learning. And it's important to understand why we're learning, what we're learning, and whether or not we're learning at all. So here's a myth. I got 3 myths for you, and let's see if you think that this myth is true or not true. Okay. So myth number 1: your brain can't change after a certain point in childhood. Okay. What do you guys think? True or not true? This is interactive. I don't do lectures.
I'm gonna say not true.
Not
Not
true.
true. Not
They
true.
said not true.
They said not true. All right, you are right. You are correct. The brain does change throughout your entire life. Now, before, what people used to believe is that after a certain part of development, usually after puberty, your brain does what they call lateralization. Okay, we're going into little science here. And what that means is basically fixing all the information that you've been, sucking up from a baby all the way up to like your mid-teens, right? You're 12, 13 years old, and it's putting it in different places. And that's kind of like when the teenagers kind of do the and they space out. Do you remember that stage? And if you have teenagers, do you recognize that stage? So that's basically what the lateralization is that your brain is literally organizing the information and placing it into place. They used to believe that that only happened up to puberty, and after that, whatever is set and we're done. That's not true. Okay, so we are constantly changing the way our brain is mapped out. That means that our brain is constantly changing by the skills that we are learning. Go.
Are at the same time, is the brain sifting between right and wrong, what's real, what's fantasy? Because a lot of the information you're pulling in when you're a child is fucking He-Man, just shit like that.
So that's actually a different part of the brain. That's what you're doing is talking about the segmentation of the brain and what its function is. And there is a part where you're able to identify the different parts of the brain. John has a question. Bring us in. I love it. So good job, John. Yeah, go ahead.
Missy, I was reading this thing, you know what I'm saying? But
Misi. Okay, hold on. You got to explain Misi. You got to explain Misi. Not
well,
everybody's going to
I,
understand that.
I actually,
I guess.
yeah, Joey told me to shut up. No,
Shut up.
no, is Missy exclusive to Puerto Rico? Because I've actually, before meeting you guys, I never heard of that. But
No, I don't think so because I've had a lot of my kids. Um, I have a lot of my kids that come in from Central and South America that I teach, and they call me Misi too.
so that's
So
it's basically a spanification of Miss, like Missy,
and
Missy.
that's exactly what it is. Misi is the um, very heavily accented version of Mrs. And
Yeah,
Mister is the very heavily accented version of Mister. Now,
gotcha.
the issue is that it was always the precursor, right? The prefix before the teacher's name, Miss Felicies or, Mr. Matos and stuff like that. Cool. But Misi and Meeston was hard enough to say, and the kids would forget. They definitely were not going to try to say Johnson Brown because these kids were not used to pronouncing these last names, or Schwartz or something like that. It will be really hard for a kid to say that, so they just stuck with Mises and Meested, and it
Okay.
stuck. It stuck. There goes a little history, right? You see, learning is or me still okay, me still now that's a Puerto Rican thing, Jose. So I got Jose, which is one of my old students, right? And now forever friend. He was also talking about the me still, and that was just the way the kids would just try to call your attention. It was great. So going back, the myth number 2. Let's see if you guys can figure this out. Your brain will only change negatively once you reach adulthood. So basically, once stage in your life, then things start deteriorating. Your brain cells, starts going by, you start getting memory loss, forgetfulness, etc. What do you think? Is that true or not true?
God, I hope not.
Yeah, if Josette doesn't mind me stealing her answer, I'm tempted to say yes, but I hope not.
So it is also false. It is not true. Good job, guys. You see, you know your science. It is not true. Everyone has an opportunity not only to make sure that their brain doesn't start deteriorating, but even if you've had some form of brain damage. And this information I got from one of the videos I was watching, Laura Boyd, I believe it was Dr. Laura Boyd from one of those TED Talks that I was looking at. She was explaining that she focuses on the brain after a stroke and the damage that a brain receives during a stroke. What it is that she's saying a lot of people believe that, once, there's some type of damage or once you get older, your brain can't reconstruct itself. And that's completely false. It can. So, myth number 3 is the next one. So if you don't use it, you lose it. What do you guys think?
I say yay.
Nay.
Yeah.
So I got 2 yes and
I
1
say
no,
yay.
and then I have in the comment section, I'm not sure. It is true. If you don't use it, you will lose it. So what does this mean? What happens when we're learning a new skill? Okay, when we're learning a new skill, we are actually, depending on how much we practice that skill, that determines whether it's short-term memory, like a Dory, or long-term memory, like an elephant. Okay. So what we want to do is that we want to make sure that not only are we constantly learning new skills, but we are challenging ourselves to learn the skill better and better. That's going to be the next part that I learned about, how our brain works. But ultimately, where this comes down to is that you can constantly enrich and develop your brain throughout your entire life cycle. It does not stop working because you hit a certain age. That idea of para qué aprender eso, that doesn't.
So, just
Uh-huh.
so I can throw a little out
Yeah.
there,
Go ahead.
all
Go
those
ahead.
people who say, "Oh, well, I can't do this, I can't learn that, I'm so old."
Bullshit. And yeah, you know what? My
Hold
niece and
on.
nephew know that I cuss. So bullshit. That's bullshit. All right. That is not true. And remember, the same way our bodies can generate and regenerate and strengthen with muscles, and you can help strengthen and enrich your body with the right food and exercise and all that, your brain functions the same way. So you need to give it what it needs in order for it to grow. If you don't give it the stimulus that it needs in order for it to grow, then yeah, if you don't use it, you will lose it. Your brain actually shrinks in size. It will
I was gonna
actually
say
change.
that.
Yes, it will
I
change. It will still
believe
change, not
I
for better
believe
though.
the membrane of the brain, the part of the brain that controls memory and depression, is the exact same one.
Correct.
So it holds this much data. As you fall into depression, it gets smaller, holding
Correct.
less data, and as you come out of depression, it'll hold more. Now,
It'll
I'm
grow
not a
more.
scientist, but
Correct.
I believe that's
And
what
you're
I read.
right. You're right. And remember, this is something that we're right now in this space and time. We're learning so much more about the brain. Neuroscience is being, is fascinating, and it's something that I've always been interested in. Obviously, my focus would be more linguistics, but it's something that I'm definitely fascinated about. And the brain is everything. Mente sano, cuerpo sano. The Greeks had it right. If your mind is healthy, then the rest will follow. It doesn't mean that you only have to work on your brain. You got to work on everything. Your body will feed the brain will feed the body. So get your exercise in, and
So
do
let
your
me let
your
me
work.
throw this in here, and I'm gonna put
Uh-huh.
everybody in because I want to see everybody's expression. And
Uh-huh.
I read this in an article, and I had to write it down. We know all these things about the brain and how it works when it's learning, and how beneficial things are to learning, and how beneficial learning is to other things in our life. But
Right, right.
how come the schools or the educators, because we don't want to put them in the same category, they notice, and yet we rarely hear, quote unquote, "I want to learn more about this subject we covered in school."
Right. Okay. Okay. So here's the thing. You
Fading back
have
into the darkness.
fading back into the darkness. Okay. That kind of like jumped a little ahead into where I was going to go, but that's okay because it does kind of segue as far as what we're learning in school. So here's the idea. We're taught that everything that we learn in school is needed for our future, right? And what I've been researching is, because I can't pretend that I know the whole history. I'm a teacher, but it doesn't mean that I'm a historian of education. I'm not. I can tell you famous teachers. I can tell you the first teacher, the one that we praise as the first teacher, Rafael Cordero in Puerto Rico. That I can definitely say I know that history because I was trained to be a teacher in Puerto Rico. That was my background, my training. That was my environment in learning, right? But I can definitely say that I forget where it was that I got this information from. Um, but it's basically saying that the method that has been used in traditional school systems, I'm going to just use it like that, like what we've been to, public schools and whatnot. um, it is a methodology that follows two techniques. So the original reason why people were in school 200 years ago is because those people had enough money to become either a scientist or a professor of academics. And so that's why we have all the things that we've learned. So that's why we have math, and we have language arts, and we have science, but that's because those people were expected to have to know all of these things.
Quick
And it's
question.
not
There were
necessarily, I see Joey popping by.
apprentices. There were apprentices.
Right. They were apprentices of the
How
academics.
come apprentice? No, 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 no. Like you have a blacksmith, you have
Uh-huh.
an apprentice. How
Uh-huh.
come that was never considered a student?
Be-
That's like a disciple in kung fu. That's a
that's a
disciple. That's not
disciple,
even
right?
a student.
Well, because a student, remember, we also had a blacksmith wasn't very high up in the hierarchy of social status, was he? So remember, the people first who were educated were people who can pay for it. Okay. And so what ended up happening is that and this goes into the why we are learning what we learn. um People were saying, well, everybody should deserve to learn. They shouldn't only be the people who have the money to pay for it. Education should be something that's available to all, and it is. But then the standards on which you are being educated was also matched to what those people who had the money to be educators should have. So you should have the same thing, equal things to be educated. Well, why do they get to learn that? But why were they learning that? Forgot they looked more into why they got that and I didn't, rather than what are they using it for? Is it going to apply to me? And that's something that's really, really being looked into now. And now, because education is so much more available, now it's very rare to find some people, not impossible. You still have people who don't know how to read to this day. And that breaks my heart that you have full blown adults that don't know how to read. And it kills me,
Not many, but
but
yeah,
it's the
I
truth.
have met a few, and it is.
Yes. And it breaks my heart. And I'm always, if you know anybody, know of
And
anybody
you
who
have
is
no choice
interested,
but to drop everything that you're doing
stop
and help them.
and
Yes,
help them.
yes.
And that is our duty. That is our duty as a civil person, as an earthling. uh Teach them, because my dogs know more words than some of these people, because we talk to our dogs and they understand at least 400, to 500 or 400 words to 1,000 words, dogs, I'm saying, than other people. So Mr. Badillo said, not to mention most of those learning arts based on what is seen, not what was the science of that art. Exactly. So that's basically that's what we're looking to, as far as why is it that we're learning what it was that we're learning. So we're basically following a same model, right, of something that has been effective and necessary 200 years ago. It's been 200 years. Obviously, our society has changed. We need to look into a different way, not only of teaching, but what it is that we're learning. Because we're also learning things that, yes, it's a general consensus. We all need to know. Go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
A way of I hear that quite a bit. We have to find a way, singular. Maybe I'm playing with the words too much, singular, a way.
Wordsmith.
But there's so many different types of people. We all have different fingerprints.
Right.
Not everybody learns the same. I didn't learn my tonsile the way John learned his tonsile, the way maybe Porty learned his tonsile. It's the same thing, but it's not everybody's going to learn the same way. So how is it that the educational system and educators are expected to find a way?
So remember how I said that's the art of teaching, where you have to find a way to be able to get the same message to your group of students, whatever those group of students are, and whatever level they are, in whatever, and still not leave anyone behind feeling that they didn't learn something. And here's the thing, when you're learning, it's not only how your brain functions. Not everyone's brain functions and is mapped the same. Maybe I am very good with words, but I suck in math, which is true. Okay. All those things are true. I'm very good with words, but my spelling sucks because I have a form of dysgraphia. Now I'm an English teacher, people. Okay. And I have misspelled, I don't know how many times, but you know what? The brain is an amazing thing, because as soon as I learn the rules to that grammar and I've mastered the language, my spelling has improved greatly because my brain says, oh, no, it's not this. It's I before E except after C, unless it sounds like I, like I, like, or E, like brownie and neighbor. And oh, I got all these rules. It took me longer to try to even say it than it was for me to think it. And that goes through my brain in a fraction of a second. And I'll know which way to write it because I understand the rules of grammar. But that's the way my brain thinks.
Josette had a question for you.
Go.
So, do you think that in people trying to find other ways of, like how you said, the whole hi,
Hi.
how you said that, everybody, it's what are you going to use the information you're learning for? Do you think that's why it's becoming more popular to
Yes.
have more
Yes.
available for trade schools to be
Yes.
around and things like that?
Well, first of all, we
Wait,
need trade
trade school
careers.
like vocacional?
Yes, trade school is what we know as vocacional. We need those careers. We need carpenters and we need plumbers and we need
Right.
electricians and we need all those things because without them, we can't build the shelters for all the other things that we need. We need that. That's important. We need the mechanics. We depend on the machinery that we've developed, and without it, we're gonna die. We need people, the technicians of the internet, and we need all of these things, right? We don't absolutely have to need it to survive, but in order to live within the space that we live in right now, it's necessary. So it is a need, right? We've developed the demand, now it's a need. And yes, that is why there has been, and that's where I was going to, there has been so many different new schools and in initiatives, because basically what we understand now, not before the archaic way of teaching, which was the way that I had to learn how to teach, which never worked well for me. So I'm surprised I did as good as I did, or as well as I did. Yes, we need designers and seamstresses, otherwise we're walking naked. This is it's very true. All of these things are necessary. But going back to the point that I was trying to make, the issue is that we have to make sure that what we're teaching, the way that this teacher has to teach all of her students, it doesn't matter what kind of age level you're in either, because when I don't want to say students anymore, I want to say learners, because we are all learners. We never stop being learners. But in order for you to be a learner and really really engage in what you're learning and make it a significant lesson or a skill to learn, it has to be in a safe environment, which is why I was asking, how was it in your space? You have to feel safe, because if you don't feel safe, there's a chemical in your brain that's called cortisol that is going to be activated, and it's only going to focus on safety, 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 and it's going to overload your brain and it cannot take in new information. Joey.
I read this and this was actually good. It hit hard. Powerful learning needs personal investment.
Absolutely.
And this is
Absolutely.
on behalf of the learner himself. Now, keeping that in mind, what can you tell us about these new? I don't know, they're new for me. I haven't heard of them. Student-led schools,
Okay, those are actually pretty good.
because
uh,
that's pretty much you tending to the curiosity of the student as it occurs.
so all that simply
Now, hold
means,
on. The
go
only
ahead.
thing that I see about it is, though many people say that what the system gives you is irrelevant and whatever, but what I do see, because I try to look for at least a silver lining on everything, is that at least it exposes you to things that you might not have been exposed to before.
Correct.
Because if you don't know what to look for, one, you'll never find it. Two, you'll never even have the curiosity of learning about that, because you don't even know that exists.
Very good. So going back into the physiology of the way the brain works, right? We talked about a safe environment. Thank you, thank you, Joey. And please, I'm going to cross my fingers to go back to that question as far as what student-led schools are, and to answer both Joey's, right? What we are seeing is that the people who these new ways or these different ways, it's not all that new, because we're going back to Dewey, and those of you who study psychology knows that Dewey says we have to learn by doing, and that's what student-led schools are. The kids are learning by actively engaging in their learning process, not what we used to have to go through, which is a lecture where the teacher stands very firmly in front of the classroom and the children must sit quietly in a row and copy and listen.
So
And
you pretty much learn in lab.
yes,
That's
remember how
interesting.
lab was my favorite time. Whenever we had science class, I hated the theory part. I hated have to copying all this information. It was important for me to learn it, but let me play. Let me, because I am a very hands-on learner. Yes, I'm a teacher and I sit through, I don't know how many, Joey can tell you, I have a PD. The PD is a professional development day. That's me sitting down for 7 hours or 7.5 hours, because we get, at least an hour's break or a half an hour's break, to listen to somebody blah, 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 and tell us how much we need to be able to let the kids engage without getting us engaged. The it's insane. So we understand. And now the kind of learners that we have right now, you are a learner right now, whether you're an adult, whether you're a child, it doesn't matter. A lot of people tend to think, when I say, oh, these learners, these kids, they don't know. The adults are their attention span is, they don't have enough time. They really don't, because they have kids that they have to work. Yes, Joey.
We were talking about that last night, weren't we?
Yes.
That you talk to your average in general human being on the street, and it's like, so how do you feel about being a learner? And they'll be like, oh, I haven't been a learner since 12th grade. I haven't been since I left college. And it's like,
Right.
no, I didn't say student. I said learner. Aren't you
Mhm.
supposed to learn every day?
Yes.
Like, I know my level of kung fu now and I want to get better, but let's say it doesn't get better, I still can't say that I'm at the top of my game, because I don't know what I'm gonna be like tomorrow. I don't
Right.
know what it's gonna be like. How is it to do kung fu at 50, at
But
55,
the only way
at
that you
60? Since you don't know,
right.
you're always learning.
Correct. And that consistency is key. So that's another element that you have to have within a learning environment. So once again, we have to move away from, and it's very difficult for teachers who have a class that has a lot of behavioral issues, and I work with is a charter school, so I have some kids that might have behavior issues. It's really not that bad this year, but you can't expect the kids to, and because I can't do it, sit down for 7 hours and just take information and only raise their hands and wait to be called, and then yay if you got the answer right, and be quiet and go to a corner if you don't, or you don't do what you're asked to do. You need them to be engaged. These kids are bored, and this learner is bored. I'm bored when they have me sitting down watching a video for hours on end, and you're not letting me actively engage. And when I say engagement, it's not like, oh, I got to click on the mouse every now and then. That's not engagement. That's what a lot of people thought it was during the pandemic. Yay, I get to click. It's engaging. No, that's not engaging. That's just telling me more, giving me more instructions what to do, and I'm following through. Engaging means that I get to learn things at my pace. So what I've learned is that our learners know what they need, because this is an individual thing. It's a personal thing, the way that you learn, right? So remember that what we're not learning, and I wanted to get that into that, the way that you learn is a very personal way, and it's not just visual or auditory or kinesthetic, which is you actually doing things. You might work better learning a certain thing if somebody explains it to you, versus you learning a certain things by actually doing it. Or you might be one person that has to go through each step. First tell me, now show me, now let me do it. And that's the way that you do. Yes, John.
I have a question kind of
I feel like
regarding.
I'm giving class, I swear. Go ahead.
I have a question regarding one of the earlier points you were making, as far as
Uh-huh.
the estimated timeline of when your brain's developing, what's considered, you being an adolescent and all that, as a teenager getting used to your body, right?
Yeah,
Exactly. So, granted, this was a few years back, and I haven't gotten an update on it. But I remember reading an article one time where they were saying how the age of adolescence, when you go through the most biological and emotional change as far as your brain and neurologically speaking goes. They were considering like increasing that to, instead of like, I don't know, 12 to 17, 12 to like mid 20s, because as a 20-year-old you're still in that phase or whatever.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that because remember when they do this research, it is on average, and um Botti's there, so maybe as you know, as a doctor, he can give me a little bit more insight. I don't know, but my experience, because I've taught from pre-K up to actually college level, I've been able to give college courses. As a student, as a senior student, I was able to give some very basic college courses. So technically, I taught college kids, but it was just like high school kids, so it was not, no skin off of my teeth. But what basically it means is that it really is in it depends, it varies. Quoting from Joel. It depends and it varies on what kind of person you are, what your environment is, where your base is. And that's another study that they've done. There's this one video, I think it's How We Learn. It's a fantastic video on on what it is that the brain does, and from childhood, and how a child can be receptive to learning, whether they are that area. Remember, we talked about that cortisol, that chemical in your body, in your brain, that if you don't feel safe, it doesn't allow you to be able to take in information, digest it, and actually develop, and that those synapses, and develop those more connections for those neurons to store information in your brain. You won't be able to map out more than normal. And that's usually because you don't want a traumatized person to be triggered. The issue is with the brain is that if that area of the brain is constantly activated, right, and engaged, then that makes it that much sensitive. It's kind of like a hair trigger sensitivity. So if you are always engaging your brain on doing a specific thing, it's going to remember to go to that, that message is clear. Oh, yeah, I know the way. And it'll go straight to that part of the brain and get it done. That's how repetition is. That's how you have those crazy people. I don't know if you've seen those videos of those people who are just constantly like factory workers that are do, 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 and they move really, really fast. They don't even think about it. Their body already knows what to do because the brain remembers the message and it keeps on going back and forth, back and forth. Cool. But when it comes to the person, yeah, they have to extend it, because the way that these children, the childhood is back then versus now, versus maybe another 10 years from now, it's going to be very different. So we're going to have different kinds of learners.
Okay. Could an issue, not an issue, but a factor that I see also is let's take education 100 years ago. You had X amount of information to learn.
Okay.
50 years ago, the amount of information broadened. There's a lot more. 10 years ago, there's a lot more. Last year, there's a lot more. Every year, there's more and more information to add on. Is there a limit to how much stuff a human can put into their brain, and is that a factor?
No, there is not a limit.
Like, I feel completely sorry for every historian, Juan Rietra. You're amazing, because every day you have more and more to add on into your mental portfolio.
So, okay, remember how I just said that the more you activate a certain part of your brain, the more sensitive and engaged it is. So therefore, it's easier to make that communication to the, oh, here's some learning opportunity. Let me take that in. Let me go. Have you ever had the experience where people look at you like, oh my God, you took to it like a duck to water. How did you do that? This is your first time? Well, that's because it's something that your brain is used to already doing. We took a pottery class last weekend, right? And the guy that was leading the class looked at Joey, is like, okay, do you do other things that, like martial arts or whatever? We mentioned martial arts, and he was like, okay, hand-eye coordination is key for learning how to do this. If you're used to doing hand-eye coordination, your brain is, you're using the same parts of your brain to throw a punch than it is to make a pot. It's the same thing. It's some, it might not be the same level of strength, but you're still using that hand-eye coordination force.
That was fantastic. We were
It was
covering
so
our
much fun.
center and
Yeah,
keeping our
it was
elbows
great.
sunk, you know.
So, but we were learning a new skill, right? So I'm dying to go back so I can further develop that skill because it's something that I like. And it says, the more time passes, the more we know of any certain topic because experiments end up touching that specific subject. And that's basically what it is exactly. So you're more familiarized with it and you keep on going. But so the more you learn a new skill and the more you practice that skill, then the more, and when I say practice, I mean the more you do it, you do develop those branches, you do develop those neurons, but you got to be careful on what it is that you're learning and how you're learning it, because otherwise you're going to get really good at being really bad at something. So you got to be careful the quality of the work that you're doing. Hi. It's amazing, right? How do you get here? So you have to also be, it's not just quantity, it's also quality that matters, which is why I go back to I mean, I teach English language arts, and anything that has to do with story, language arts, language, or whatever the case may be, there's always a fundamental um, idea that you have to come back to. And then we just go broader and deeper into it. But it always circles back to those fundamentals. At practicing martial arts, those who practice Wing Chun Kali systems, we know that there are fundamentals that we have to practice. We always are going to go back to the first four because that's our index, that's our Rolodex. And that fundamental is going to help us broaden out to more things, but it's still those fundamentals that we have to go back to. If we don't go back to those fundamentals, we lose certain techniques, and then nope, you got to go back. And it's happened to me 1,000 times. Mira, Sandra, se te olvidó, montante el caballo, se te olvidó, el codo, se te olvidó this, the touch sensitivity, all those things. It's because we haven't gone back to the basics, and you got to make sure that you don't lose that connection, because once again, if you don't use it, you will lose it, and you have to make that connection stronger. Joey.
Here's something that once again that I want to share. Education shouldn't be about how much you can remember, if not how well we can use what we remember.
Okay, so here is where I want to be able to kind of like throw in the next segue. I had an amazing conversation with those little chitlins that you saw pop up on the screen a little while ago, right?
Wait, hold on. They're saying good night, little ones.
Good night, guys. I know I didn't want. I'm so sorry. And I was just about to lead you in here. So I just wanted to share, kind of like a couple of things that AC and Aiden had shared with me.
You're gonna
And these are,
interrupt me real quick.
yeah, and I just want them to just share a little bit more like what they went through. But I asked them a couple of questions, and here's a couple of quotes that they said. Remember when I asked you guys about what you like to do in class, like I asked you what kind of programs you like to work with, what did you say you liked better? Did you like when the teacher was giving the class, or did you like it better when you did the activities in class, like with other people or on the computer or stuff like that?
The activities.
And why was that you like to do the activities? What about the activities was fun?
Raising up this hand.
You can talk.
You can talk. Oh, you raising your hand? Go ahead, honey.
And
Aiden, I select you.
oh,
Go ahead.
how is oxygen coming out of trees? Can it also come out of plants?
That's
Yes.
correct. If oxygen and plants and us, we have a really special relationship. They give us the things that we need to breathe, right? And we give them the things that they need to live. So we kind of share and we help each other out.
Okay.
Isn't that cool?
Yes.
Great.
What was the question that you had?
Why is it that you like to have the activities rather than having to listen to the teacher? What's about it? This is the experience of a student-led class. So what about it do you like it better?
I like the activities better because there's more to do instead of like
Just be honest. Yeah, it's okay. Instead of what?
instead of like just doing one thing, you can do another thing.
Right.
Okay.
So you like the fact that it's fast paced? Do you like the fast paced movement? Is that what it is? Or the
Yeah.
fact that you get to do different things instead of just sitting down and writing or sitting down and listening or sitting down and reading? The sitting down part is what bothers you. But okay. When you work with your groups, you're sitting down in a group and you're working, right? What's the difference between that and listening to the teacher and sitting down by yourself?
It's not much difference.
There's
Okay,
not
there
much
isn't.
difference.
There's
So
just
Do
more people.
There's more people. Do you like more people?
No.
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 It's either me alone or one person.
Okay. So that's her style. Now, can I get Aiden back here? Because I want to ask him the same question.
Aiden,
Because
come
I
here.
know it's
Titi
going to
has a
be
question.
different.
Yeah. What?
He's coming.
Okay. So Aiden, Titi has a question.
Yes.
So, Aiden, do you like it better when your teacher is teaching you or when you're with a friend or a classmate and you guys are working together?
When I'm with a friend and a classmate and we're working together.
Why do you like that better? Why is it better for you?
Because we might be able to talk and I like speaking to other people.
Okay. Has there ever been a moment, I don't know, did you ever learn something more from your friend than you did from the teacher? Like the teacher taught you, you didn't get it, but when your friend told you the same thing, you got it? No, you were just talking about something that you want, nothing about class. That's okay. That's part of learning. All right, Aiden. Thank you so much, guys. I love you both. Mwah, mwah, mwah,
Love
mwah,
you.
mwah. I
Love
appreciate you. Thanks for helping out today.
You're welcome.
I know there's been times when I, as a learner, when the teacher will say something and you just kind of like, I'm
Okay.
not getting it. And exactly how you said, like somebody else explains it to you and it's like, wait, I got that one. I don't know what you were talking about, but I understood that. And it's just the terminology is different because a lot of times the teachers are so much older than us. So then when you say something a certain way, you're like, not getting it. It's
Not
not
getting it.
clicking in. And then somebody else says it who has more of the same terminology as you do. And it's like, oh, wait, okay, I got it.
So there goes the other part that I was getting into as far as the way that we learn. It has to be relevant.
In Kung
Okay.
Fu, at least in Wing Chun Kali systems, it's like that. If there's 20 people, it's not so much that one speaks your language because we're all speaking combat, but you get to see the same thing in 20 different points of view, 20 different energies, 20, and one of them is going to click, and eventually the next one is going to click. And then when you come to see, you have 20 new views on top of the way that you view it.
Right. Right. But regardless, that's another part about learning. Learning, not only do you have to have a safe environment, so the chemicals in your brain are actually receptive to learning, but you also have to have something that will engage you. You have to actively be engaged in order to make it matter. And your brain actually has to make it matter, but it has to be relevant. You have to make a connection. If you can't make that connection, this is the way, and this is literally the way the brain works. Your brain learns by what it's already learned. Its basis and fundamental is your own experience, right? So you have to find that point of relevance in order to make it click, that aha moment, that espérate, I think I understand, in order for it to start growing from there and morphing into a new knowledge. But it's never going to adhere, it's never going to stick unless you have something to base it on. Does that
So
make
once again, how do you do that nowadays when there's so many different types of kids? Is it even possible for one teacher to split themselves into 30 different directions?
No, but if you have a student-led class, yes, because you have a basic goal. The path that the learner takes to get to that goal is up to them. And the teacher is there to help them figure out which is the best path for them. That's what student-led teaching in schools is all about. This is where this whole revolutionary way of thinking is coming. It's not revolutionary. The thing is that the teacher has to be well prepared. The teacher has to prepare for the one that might not get to that advanced level, but also has to be prepared for the one that's going to shoot right through the basics.
So just to throw this out there, we need more educators and less people that are there for a 15 and 30th check and the holidays and summers off.
If you're
Message.
into the profession of teaching for the check, you needed to go back to school anyway, because that was a dumb move. We don't get paid enough. We really, and then
Tell
the
them you
money.
don't get rich being a teacher.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You are not rich being a teacher, and you spend a good amount of your salary right back into your classroom because you need the skills, and you may not be working in a school that can provide those tools, but you need that to make sure that your kiddos are okay, because you're in it to win it. So Francesca, Frenchie is one of my other old students and forever friends. And yeah, definitely. She did. If there were certain things that I would try to explain, maybe she didn't get the way I explained it, but somebody else would get it. And I would let them. I was like, yeah, break it down for her, because I understood that it's a concept we call think, pair, share. So it's basically letting each other kind of like digest that information together to see if they can break down and understand what madness the teacher gave them in order to understand it better. That part of sharing information, I always encouraged it. I encouraged study groups. I encourage, but you have to be, ready to focus on that topic and understand what was being taught. So yes, understanding things was better, right, with another classmate because of the language, like Josette was saying, the jargon that was used, the point of reference. They will know what things that they're looking at the moment that everybody is watching. There's more points of reference. I don't watch TV, so I don't know half the shows that the kids are watching, and most of the kids don't even watch shows. They just look at TikTok videos all day, but they know which one, and they know which episode, or they know whatever. So it's just really hard to for me to be. That's what come. They always say teachers have to be into popular culture, and I'm like, I don't have to. But I do need to have at least some point of reference that makes sense to them. So I'm going to probably pull out a movie that's maybe 10, 15 years old, but they'll know it, and that's important to be able to have that point of reference to go from there.
Speaking of points of references to go from,
Uh-huh.
um, I've heard split down the middle, 50-50 is good, it's not good, it's useful, it's crap. Grading systems.
Okay.
Oh
Oh, that's a
shit. You see
whole
that
different
side,
ballgame.
man?
Yes, because I mean, I'm in the process of finishing up the first quarter right now, so I'm like right there in the grading system. And here's the deal. The reason why these grading systems exist is because there has to be a measuring it is crap, because how can you really measure what somebody is capable of doing and showing, especially if it was something that was poorly executed in the first place. If you all learn in different ways, the grading system just works for the people who know how to do what the teacher taught them how to do, the way the teacher taught them how to do it, right? Um and it's something that
It's pretty much to
is,
see how much you've retained of what they've given you, how much you've
yes,
been able to stuff in your
how much you can
jar.
recap,
It doesn't
retain, and
necessarily
regurgitate.
mean
Mhm.
how well you've learned it.
Exactly. So here's the thing. If you ever took class with me, you know that my tests were nothing that you can study and memorize for. Because I used to say, what are you supposed to do with bottles? You're supposed to recycle them. Now, in Puerto Rico, decíamos la botella, right? Hay que embotellar esto. That means you got to fill up the bottle. And then when the test comes, you just pour it all out into the test. And once you're done, it's empty. You have nothing left in your brain. You didn't learn anything. There was no point of it. But you got an A in the test, right? And mommy and papi is happy because he got all A's and honors. Okay, qué bueno. But what the hell did that work for you? Okay, nothing. So I used to tell my students, la botella se supone que se recicla. O sea, you're supposed to recycle your bottles, right? We're supposed to use this again. It should be reused, not something that should be thrown out into the landfill. So that once again goes into what learning should be. I try to make learning Yes, you have a lot of intelligent people who test horribly. I'm one of them. And to quote my niece AC, right? To quote our niece Joey and I's niece AC, she said, I quote, this one broke my heart. She goes, "Tests makes my insides gooey." All right. Now AC is 8 years old and in third grade. Okay. And it doesn't make me feel any good that any of my students will feel the same way. I talk to my students like this is a test, and I really need to know what you know. And I try to make my tests the closest to what the standardized tests are here, because this is what I've learned teaching here in the United States. You're taking the whole year to get them ready for that one stupid test. That stupid test that exists because of the No Child Left Behind Act, where they make sure that they have a standardized test to see how much, to benchmark how much the students are supposed to learn. Now, you have to have some type of measuring, but that should be based on the skills that they can show, not what everybody else knows and how they know it. Okay. And when I was growing up in New York, it wasn't called the regions, it was called the citywide test, right? The citywide test. I remember those. I remember those. And those, it's just all the same thing. It's still all the standardized tests, fill in the little bubble. Now it's click the button. It's still the same thing. You have different ways of doing it. They say, oh, we're engaging the students. They get to click and drag it. Why? It's still you regurgitating information and talking to them in a way that they don't understand. 67% of my students fail those tests. Why? Because they just don't understand the language. It's not like they don't know how to do this. I know my kids know how to identify the topic. I know they can read a theme. If I don't say if I say what is the theme of this story, they look at me like I got three heads and they say, "What's the story trying to tell you? What could you learn from this story?" Oh, well, I learned that this and they'll go right off. So then who's failing who? As far as I'm concerned, the children are doing the best that they can with the world that we're living right now. But we're not just talking about children, because I also asked questions to an adult who was at the university. And this adult was telling me, hey, I needed help. She needed help. She was taking her classes. She needed help. None of her professors were willing to give her that extra hand that she needed. This was a student that needed help, went to her professors. Now, we're talking about adults here. Went to her professors and say, I didn't do so hot in this last test. I think I need a little bit more guidance. What can you do to help me understand this material? I love what I do. This is the profession that I'm currently in. I'm just trying to get the paperwork so I can get paid a little bit better that, for what I deserve, so I can at least live off of what I love to do. That's why we go to school, to follow through with this paper chasing. That's another podcast. We're not going to go into that. But the
Well,
truth
I
of the
mean, we
matter
can
is,
we can break that down real simple, because I have a real simple way of breaking this down. No matter what you do in life, no matter what it is, if it's a dread, if it's horrible, if you hate going there, if you can't stand Mondays, it's a job. You're
it's a
doing it
job.
for money.
Hmm.
If no matter how much you get paid, you enjoy what you're doing, that is truly a career.
That's a career, no matter what it is. And that's a Francesca. I told you, Mama, you want to do hair? Go ahead and do hair. Don't try to put yourself into the standards of other people of what success is for them. Are you happy doing what you got to do? Are you happy doing then that's what you need to do. Okay. And that's what I've told all of my students. I was like, you do not follow through with what it is that other people want for you, your family. And I love my parents and I love my support, but you know what? It's the truth is, you have to do what makes you happy, what fills you. Otherwise, you're not living. And that is the kind of learning that we are missing in our classes, in our learning environment. Nobody is going to be more engaged. What is going to engage you more? Learning something that you feel you're not going to be able to take advantage of, or learning something that you feel you do. So, ah,
Is there a way of teaching and getting people engaged like this? I mean,
yes.
is there the mythical A way?
No, there's never a way. And that's what we have to let go, right? The education pushes so hard on college. They push so hard because they got to get you in and got to get more people out. It's about money. That's unfortunate, but that's what it is. It's about money. Get in, get out. We got other people to enroll. I'm sorry. I wish I had a better option. And it's not, this is what it is. It is what it is. That's a come. I don't like to focus on grades. I like to focus on what you know. And this is that's why I would test the way I would test. I was like, honey, you're leaving my classroom with knowledge. You're not going to leave my classroom with an A and be like, hey, I did it. You're going to leave my classroom with an A going, woof, that was hell. Good. Because your brain actually needs some form of stress in order for it to realize that it's important. And this is going back to the physiology of how your brain works. Your brain needs to have some level of stress in order to understand that what you're giving it is important. That's why when you're learning a new skill, when you're exercising, you have to challenge yourself. Did I ever get in trouble for nah? I'm too good to get in trouble for some nonsense like
You
that.
know what? Sifu does that with us.
What
He'll,
stresses us? Yeah.
yeah, not stress us, but like purposely leave a piece out for you to
Okay.
figure out and put the puzzle together. So this way, once you put the puzzle together, it's yours.
Yes.
You know
And
what I mean?
so
From
that
that
is a
point
learning
on, that
technique
technique becomes yours.
because Sifu is an amazing educator.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
And you
That
know
is
what?
a
I think we
technique.
all picked up the same trait.
Yes, we did. So when you are surrounded, once again, this is how experience helps make that sticky stuff to learn a new skill, right? So when you have certain experiences around you that can benefit or be detrimental depending on what kind of the way you react to it, um it can benefit the way that you learn, or it can mar the way that you've learned. And I can give you two examples in a moment, but this is what I want to get to. There is something called cognitive conflict. Okay. The cognitive conflict, it needs to exist in order to cause that level of stress, and it's a healthy level of stress, because if we didn't have healthy levels of stress,
Two
we
things.
wouldn't.
Josette has a question after
Uh-huh.
this. And what was that again? Cognitive what? Can you repeat that?
Cognitive conflict.
Cognitive.
Right. So cognitive conflict is that little bit of stress. That's when, oh, I can't seem to get this right. I got to try it again. I want it to be perfect. That conflict is okay. But you got to be careful not to tilt that stress a little bit too hard on that meter. Now, if you're like a learner like me, I was way too hard on perfection and I lost the purpose of learning. So you have to balance, you have to learn how to balance it. Too much stress is no good, because then you lose the whole point of learning it. It becomes a stressful thing, and your brain goes overload, overload. There goes the cortisol again, and I'm not learning anything. But just the right pressure creates that little bit of stress that you need in order to start developing those connections and that synapses in your neurons that actually make the learning long term. And that's our ultimate goal. Short term memory is great for short term things. Long term memory is what makes it stick and stays. Joey.
So, how do you feel about those tests that are like choose the best answer type of tests?
So I actually like those kind of choose the best answer, because those create what we call critical thinking. Now, the issue is um, there should be more than one best answer. Let me explain.
Uh-huh.
So, the choose the best answer is a way of making a multiple choice question, right? You have to have a multiple choice. So it still makes you think instead of just looking for the cookie cutter answer. What I mean by the cookie cutter answer is that, oh, there goes the exact line that's in the passage. That's the one I have to choose because that's the right answer. That's cookie cutter. That's not creating cognitive thinking. That's just recalling. You're on the lower level of the web, or if you want to go further back in, what's his name? I forgot, the guy with the steps. Anyway, some type of old man that probably died or is still alive and got paid for doing. Aw, you're welcome, Frenchie. So, yeah, this is definitely, this is a way of you choosing best answers, a way of you creating that critical thinking. What would be the best answer? The problem is that you have to see everything with the choose the best answer. I like those, me personally, I like those. But that's only showing what we call, we have DOKs now in standards, in at least the state of Ohio. We have DOKs. I'm sure you've heard of them. They're called depths of knowledge, right? So you have DOK 1, DOK 2, 3, and 4. And a DOK, that would probably be a DOK 3, where you have to think a little bit further outside in a more broad and abstract point of view in order to choose the best answer. It doesn't have to be a very hard one, but it does have to be there, because, well, this is right and this is right. How do I know which one is best? Which one is it that covers the question? That's when you have to go back to the question and read in its entirety what is it that it's actually asking. So there you're showing that you're comprehending the question that's being asked. And there you have to say which one can best answer everything that this question is asking for. That's how choose the best answers work.
Okay, and one other question, going back to the whole that stress meter that you were talking about, that
Cognitive conflict.
we both have, yeah.
We all,
That Ace
Ace
has
got it
very
too. Yeah,
much.
I know she does. Oh my
So
God, my heart.
today it was brought to my attention by Aiden that he was told by his gifted teacher that he is bad at following directions. And that was the exact wording of the teacher. So
Oh my goodness, is my mother watching? How many times have you heard that?
so after like talking about like what exactly happened, what was the given situation, it's, and I can't say for sure, it sounded to me like what he was told to do was basically cut following the lines. And Aiden has yet to have those motor skills where he can do that properly. And so he ended up cutting inside the lines instead of outside the lines. And because of that, he was told that he doesn't follow directions. Is that an instance where it's like, I want you to do it this way, and this is how you need to learn to do it, and because you didn't do it that way, it's bad and it's wrong? Or is that an instance of, well, maybe the teacher needs to like figure something out? Am I frozen?
No, Sandy is. I'm going to bring her into the studio over here. But before she comes and she answers that, if it's not a case of his motor skills, if it was just a decision that he made, John, isn't that a sign of being an artistic person?
It's definitely that's the origin
Yeah,
space.
you want me to do it like this, but I think it looks better this way. So
And that's
because all of my artist friends went through the same thing.
With him, it can be one of both. I know it could be one of both with him, because like he's also very literal. So if you don't tell him exactly what to do, he won't do it the way you tell him to do it.
He's
like a
gonna do
teacher had
his
told him, write your
interpretation
name on the
of what you
paper,
want.
and then they proceeded to answer questions. And because the teacher never said to write your answers on the thing, he just, well, I wrote my name on the paper, that's all you told me to do, and handed in the paper like that. So I know with him it's also very, it can be very back and forth. But when I was speaking to him about it, he's very vocal about what goes on. So when he was telling me, he was like, well, I tried to cut it, but when I cut it, I cut the door and it wasn't the line. And she said I was bad at following directions because I didn't cut the line. And it was like, oh, well, I feel like that's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it was a matter of he chose to do that, that is a sign, right, John?
Yeah, that's basically the origin space for creativity. And if you don't have creativity, you don't have art. You just copy other people. But
because that's going into the topic. There's some people who who learn by following, by imitating.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I've done that lots of times. How is it that you do this? Okay, and I have to get next to the person. All right, he throws this. Oh, okay. Oh, you turn your body into it, and and if it's not for those details. So, Sandy, you ready? I think she's trying to connect back in?
I mean, I'm almost there.
You're almost there. She is almost there. So before that, let's keep on with that, with the same thing we were talking about. What else would be a sign, John?
As far as like being kind of piggybacking off of that, just being rebellious, like just in general.
Because I mean, a sign for me being getting into graffiti and being un vándalo, pretty much tagging everything that's worth tagging. A sign should have been when I would get to my grandparents' house. First thing I do is I grab a magic marker and the newspaper and my name over and over and over. And I had at least 30 books in the house on calligraphy and stuff like that. And I was always fascinated on handwriting. If you look at my handwriting now, you're gonna be like, that's bullshit. I call bullshit on that, But yeah, I had a fascination with it. So that should have been a sign. A kid constantly strangles the neighbor's cats. That's a sign.
For better or for worse, yeah. Hopefully he'll be a really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu player and not a serial killer. But I mean, yeah, it's no coincidence that an early interest in something, and if you nurture that one thing,
Sorry, I tried.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
So I was just saying, it's no coincidence that an early interest in blank and having that thing nurtured will lead to that same thing, times 10. Like, it's no coincidence. Like, if you're interested in cartoons and drawing characters, it's very easy to become an illustrator. If you like running, you as a little kid, you're always running. You never want to walk. You always run, and you end up being, going super literal. You be a track star, or even just going general, just into athletics. Period. So
that goes right back to what Sandy was saying about that. When you find that interest, that's the thing that's gonna grab your attention. That's the thing that you're gonna.
And it's not just that. It also has to be nurtured, because
right.
As a little kid, oh my God, I love samurai swords. I don't know. That's every time I draw, that's all I draw. But I don't nurture it. Nobody talks to me about it. Boom, boom, boom. So I don't end up being a blacksmith. I don't end up being a fencer. You know what I mean? So it has to be nurtured.
So how do you actually get to, like, is there any plan that anybody's trying to implement to actually touch the minds of the learners and engage them personally in it? This, I know you're gonna like this. This is something, and I know where you're gonna come from, but I'm gonna say who wrote it to everybody. I think she wrote it. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will remember how you made them feel.
Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
Maya Angelou.
I've heard that too.
So how do you do that within not teaching, but showing people how to be a learner? How do you create learners keeping that in mind?
Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to get to. All right, so every time you are working on as a teacher, right, as a profession, they ask you to develop what they call they want you to develop your philosophy, your teaching philosophy. What is your teaching philosophy? What is it that you believe is the way that your scholars should be taught? What is it that you feel is important? Because you have to have, your students are not going to enjoy what they're learning from you if you don't enjoy it. That's just bar none. You're not going to have, you've had, and I think everybody's had that experience where you've had a teacher, professor, somebody, a trainer, somebody who's trying to train you for work. Okay. That's still learning. You're still being a learner. If they don't want to do it, you're not going to learn very well. Okay. So, what's important is to develop the skills of learning, and every experience that we have as an individual, not necessarily inside of a classroom, not necessarily at home, online, learning your math, your English, your science, your social studies. Does that have to apply? We are learning constantly. Our brains are always being activated for learning every day with every interaction. What we have to learn how to do is learn how to learn. And what I was sharing with you guys, the way your brain reacts is a step to being a good learner. Because you need to learn what makes you tick. You need to learn the way that it is that you like to learn. Once you understand the way that you like to learn, then you have to go, okay, so I got this down pat. How can I explore other ways of learning? Because you don't know whether or not it can work for you unless you give it a shot. Okay, so it's just making yourself teachable. And this is something that is very difficult for people who are perfectionists and control freaks like me. I'm a control freak. I need to have things on a list. I need to scratch off and have that feeling of, I did it. I struggled. That cognitive conflict of, I got to fix this problem. I'm a problem solver. I like to I'm a puzzle person. I like to solve problems, not necessarily math problems, but I do like to solve problems.
Is it safe to say also you should push people to try to find their own way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And oh man, my notes just went flying out the window because I just had a gremlin just cut me off, and I don't know what happened, and so whatever. But ultimately, what I wanted to go to, which was the last part, in order to wrap up, the last part of the question is, are we learning? And the answer is yes. We are learning with every interaction.
We're learning right now.
Exactly. You pulled it out of my mouth. Literally, I was about to say it. We are all learning right now. Okay. We learned something new. Now, whether or not it will stay with you is a different story. You got to go back to it. You got to try it again. You got to see what it is. You got to come back to our next podcast.
If it doesn't stay, then it really can't count as learned, can it?
Not long term, but short term. It's still learned. Does it have a lasting effect on your brain? Not enough. So remember, short-term memory will be something that you get at that moment, that click, that engagement. And oh my God, I love this. I'm interacting. The fact that we have people interacting in our comment section. This is the whole purpose and the whole reason why we started this podcast to begin with. We felt that we had a lot of information that we'd like to share, and more importantly, that we wanted to learn. So we wanted to start gathering information and networking and seeing, hey, there might be more people who can take advantage of this. Let's share, because we have a philosophy, each one teach one, right? So we want to be able to make sure that we create this platform so that everybody can share, everybody can learn, everybody can ask questions, and more importantly, we can do something about the questions that we have. So this is constant learning, constant interaction, and that's what makes it long-term. The consistency, the engagement, the finding your own path, and therefore making a long-lasting impact on our brains and expanding our craniums, right, with the new knowledge that we have. So to answer the last question, yes, we are learning. Now, what we're learning, the quality we're learning, and how efficiently we're learning, that's up to us. We never stop learning, guys. And that there, I'm touching into what I love. This is my passion. I'm an educator because I love to help people. That was my number one calling since I was a child. I've always wanted to help people. It makes me feel good. And to be in a selfish manner, I'm addicted to helping people. But if that is going to make things better for those people and things around me, I'm a junkie for life. I will always want to help people know something new. And if I can share that information with you, sometimes I get too enthusiastic, but I can share that information with you even better.
Last question. Do you think the education system can become better with the way they teach students?
I think that the education system should be exactly what we are discussing right now, ever changing. The education system is not a system without the people that are in it. So people are constantly changing. As long as we keep ourselves teachable, that includes the people who make those rules and regulations. And here is a societal issue, without going into politics, because that's not something that we have to do, but it is part of what we do, because it is part of where we at. We need to be very conscious of who it is that we put in power to make those decisions, and we need to also voice what decisions we would like to have made.
Well, I have a thought. I'm not sure if you agree or not, but the 15 minutes, half an hour, hopefully it's a lot more than that, but whatever time you spend with your kids, that moment is an educational system.
Correct. So the system is a lot more than just putting their
Don't
kids
leave it for
to school.
others if you
No.
can do it yourself.
No, you are very much part of everyone is part of everyone's experience, and you are in control of what you take in and what you refuse. So in order to help you guys understand the importance of that learning and understand that it's a lot more than just that teacher, it's a lot more than just that principal, it's a lot more than just the system, it's all of us. We have to take part of our learning. The best thing that we can do for any learner in any experience. Oh, by the way, the adult that was having issues decided I'll rather take the class again and make sure I get the information that I want, be it by the same people who made the mistake and didn't help her, or the other people, but she made it very clear she's active and she's engaging in her learning because she knows what she needs and she knows what she wants, and she's going to get it one way or another. So that's how we go ahead and we move into our learning. It has to come back. You are persistent, you are consistent. We're learning every day, guys. Yes, we are learning, and we never stop. It never stops.
Thank you, everybody. Tech Gremlins won't get the best of us.
No.
Sandy, Joey,
John, Joey.
John right there. John. There you go. That's what I got to say.
Oh, really? Well, John, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, AC. Thank you, Aiden. Thank you, Francesca and Carmen and everybody that tuned in today.
Jose
I hope
Carlo, everybody.
helpful.
John
Poti.
Wayne, just absolute everybody.
Yeah.
Poti.
Thank you, guys. Thanks
Have
for
a great
sharing.
one.